Okay, now we're going to get into plotting our panels here. So we're near the finish line. We just got to wrap it up. Last off, our last thing we looked at was finishing the plan view. We also looked at finishing the section view and the elevation view. So we're now at the point where we're ready to go into our paper space and start laying out our viewports. So let's go ahead and make this full screen and get this party going. All right, so first things first, we need to select the first page, set up our plan view, and we need to make sure that we're selecting a scale that fits within what we can fit on the paper, but also within the AWI standards too. So again, just to recap, plotting drawings, whenever you're looking at a drawing, make sure that you're paying attention to the view title at the bottom. Once you've selected the view type, you're going to see that it will tell you what the AWI minimum scale is for that type of view. So plan views, minimum is 3/8 equals a foot scale. We're not going to need to go that far down. 3/8 would be the next one below where we're at right now. So we're at a half inch equals a foot at the current rate that we're looking. So I'm going to run with that because anything larger than that, it doesn't really fit on the paper. So we're going to take the move command. We're going to highlight the viewport here, making sure to only select the viewport and not the border around the viewport too. So we just want that. We're going to use the move command, selecting the bottom left corner of my view, and we're going to paste it in the bottom left corner of my view title at the bottom. From there, you're going to use the move command one more time, and you're going to move this up north 1.5 inches, just like that. Then you can take the viewport lines and you can kind of arrange them so that way they fit to your grid. Not a necessary step, but definitely makes things smoother when you're talking about going back later to if you have to make any red line revisions or anything like that. You want to make sure that you're keeping your drawing as neatly organized as you possibly can. It's going to make things way easier down the road. Before you call this view done, make sure that you lock that viewport using the padlock in the bottom right toolbar down there. That way, if you zoom in or out, it's not going to mess up your viewport scale. Okay, so plan view, that's pretty much what we've got. Let's make sure that we are filling this out properly. So first off, let's adjust the length to make sure that it matches up with the text on the top of our view title there. Then we need to make sure that our arc reference is the correct arc reference from the architecturals too. And when I mean the correct one, there are several ways you can label this. Like right now, I could say this is my arc reference for the plan view, but really this is not the most zoomed in view of that or the most enlarged view of that of that lobby area. So what you're going to want to do is find the page that we looked at last. Looks like it's this guy. It's page A-100.00 and view number 2. Okay, so go down to here, 2/A, sorry, I gotta look again, -100.00. That is my arc reference for this view, the most zoomed in view that I have of that lobby area. It wouldn't be totally incorrect to put the overall plan view, but if you have an enlarged view, it's a better idea to make sure that you're putting the enlarged view on there versus the overall plan view. The more detailed view you have, the better off you want to, or the better the label will be. Okay, so this is view number 1. This is the plan view. You have the correct scale. Our description is filled out, and our arc reference is filled out correctly. So now we are able to move on to the next page. So to make a new page again, right click on your tab, go up to move or copy, and then hit create a copy and go to move to end. Then hit OK. All right, your tab will come in. It's going to be an exact replica of P1, but it's going to come in at P1.0 with brackets and then a 2. But what you really want to do is relabel this. On-site standard method of labeling is going to be P1. for the print reference, and then 0.0 for the page, and then 0.1 for the next page, and 0.2 for the page after. So P1.1 is what we're going to call this. And this page is going to contain the elevation views at the minimum. We will probably be able to fit the section view on here as well, and maybe even the details too, but we'll see. Okay, so you can see at 1 inch equals a foot scale, my view is just slightly too big to fit on the paper. So I need to scale it on back down to 3/4 equals a foot scale. Not a big deal. If I switch this over to elevation view, you can see that I am still well within the AWI standards of making sure that my view is not too small. So, okay, so let's go ahead and adjust this. We're highlighting that viewport once more, clicking the bottom left corner of our view, lining it up with the bottom left corner of our view title, and then we're moving that with the move command again, up 1.5 inches like that. Then you just take your viewport line, adjust it so that way it's nice and clean on the drawing, just like this, and you should be good to go. Okay, so that's elevation view 1 on page P1.1. Let's copy using the copy command and not Control V or Control C and Control V. Again, if you do Control C and Control V, you will break the formulas in this view title, and you don't want to do that. It's also really important to make sure that when you do use the copy command, you are highlighting both the view title and the viewport at the same time. If you don't do that, it will link this view title to this view. So if this view had a scale of 1 inch equals a foot and this one had 3/4 equals a foot, this would still show the incorrect scale for the other drawing. So really important to remember to check that. Also, make sure that you update your view number per the number of views that you're using on your page. Easy thing to miss, but really important that we catch that. All right, so let's go and find our second elevation view, get this viewport moved to where it needs to be using the move command. And then once we've done that, what you're going to do is we're going to update the arc references on all of these view titles here. And also lock our viewports too. Cannot forget to do that. It's really, really important that we do. Okay, arc references. So the zigzag panels, going back to our architectural drawings over here, the zigzag panels we looked at were view number 5 on page A-600.00. So double clicking there, 5-A-600.00. Okay, and then the non-zigzagged ones, which were kind of blocked by the column, are on the same page, but they're view number 2 on that page. Okay, so once you've got those set, you are good on that. You're going to go over here, and we're going to see if we can fit the section view and any details on this page. So I got to unlock that viewport, go locate the section view. Should be a little bit further down. Now, ideally, you really do want your section view to be at 1.5 inches equals a foot scale. I can guarantee you right here, this panel drawing is not going to fit that way, only because it is super tall. So what I'm going to do is actually decrease this a little bit and see what we can do. I wouldn't recommend doing this because you're going to run into issues like where here now I can't really see what's going on because my view is so small. One thing you can do, alternatively, if you have a panel drawing like this and your panels are too large to fit at 1.5 inches equals a foot scale, something you can do is throw break lines in there and sandwich your panels down a little bit. That would be fine too. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to show it at this scale here. Make note of it that it does not fit within AWI standards of a section view. I wouldn't, like again, I wouldn't really recommend doing that, but in this case, I am going to be making full scale blow up detail views off of that. And I want to still be able to show all the different heights in dimensionally as I'm going up these panels. So what I'm going to do is draw the section view here. I'll make that section view number 3 on the page. I'm going to take the viewport and we're going to line it up with that bottom corner just like we've been doing before. Move it up 1.5 inches. Adjust the viewport box so that way things are lining up just like it needs to. Okay, lock that viewport. And then from there, what we're going to do is make some blow up details off of this viewport. I'll show you 2 different methods to be able to do this that I know of. I would highly recommend what I call the new school method over the old school one, only because as you go to update your drawing later, if you have to make changes to your reveal, it's going to update both the detail and the section view at the same time. If you do it the old school method, the problem is you have to update both views every time a change occurs to the reveal. It's very unlikely that a change is going to happen to your reveal all that often, but if it does, it's kind of more of a pain to update in that case. Here I'm writing in NA for the arc reference because if you go back to the architecturals, there actually is no section view through those panels. So you can't really see what's happening behind them in any of their drawings here. Okay, back to the details here because we do need to make those here. So let's start with the old school method first. Old school method, you're always going to go to your model space. Okay, go into your model space, find your detail that you want to make. So let's say I wanted to make a blow up detail of that full depth reveal at the top of the panel. I start by drawing a circle, go mid between 2 points, and I'm going to highlight these 2 points here to get that circle nice and centered over my reveal. Then you're going to take that circle and put it on the dimension layer. Go into your properties, make sure to set that line type to hidden or hidden to. That way it shows up as a dashed line. And then the old school method, the key difference here is that you're going to copy this, paste it off to the side, and then what you're going to do is trim everything outside of that circle. Clearly there are things like this that aren't going to trim. You may have to explode it because it is a block. Blocks don't like to be trimmed, so you can do it that way. Now, that is perfectly fine. When you go to put this on paper, it is going to look exactly the same as the new school method, but like I said, the key difference here is if I make a viewport and a view title for that, the key difference is that this is a stationary detail. It does not update with the section view. So it's going to ideally look like that on paper. Now, in order to make the other method of a detail, I'll show you real quick what you can do. Some people prefer to do them one way or the other, but I want to show you how to get it done both ways. So going back here, if you're looking at, let me get rid of that too, I'm sorry. If you're looking at making a detail off of your section view, to do it the new school method, you have to draw that circle that we drew in the paper space. It's really, really important that we are doing that here in paper space and not in model space. I'll show you why in just a second. So I'm drawing that circle there, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same steps I did before, just in the paper space. So I'm setting the layer to dimension, setting the line type to hidden to, and then to make a detail view off of that, you're going to use the copy command. You're going to copy the view title, the viewport, and the circle you just drew for the detail. Then what you're going to do is go VP clip. This is a new command that we really haven't covered much yet. So VP clip is essentially cropping your viewport down to that circle. So it's going to ask you first off to select a viewport to clip. You'll select this guy. And then it's going to ask you for a clipping object, which will be the circle. Once you've clicked on that circle becomes your viewport. And you can use this little caret that's on there to adjust the view scale. So I'm able to adjust it like that. This view here, I'll show you something really cool about this here in just a second, but what I'm doing right now is lining it up with the view title here. And then I'm going to line it up over here with what's going on in my, page over here. So kind of just placing it on the paper where it looks nice, you know. I'm going to move this up towards the top since this detail is coming from up here. I kind of like to keep it visually in line with where it's coming from. And then details are always going to start with a letter and not a number. So you're going to start with A. You're going to switch your section to detail. And again, just like before, unless there is an architectural detail that shows what that reveal looks like, you're going to write NA on that. Okay, there we go. So the cool thing about this is, let's say that view, like let's say this actually shrunk, like maybe instead of a 3/4 reveal, maybe they want it to be 1 inch. So you can change that here. It's going to change it both in your section and your detail view at the same time. So I'm going to undo that because we know in our world we're going to make that 3/4 tall, not 1 inch tall. But I just wanted to show you how that works. New school method, if you use the VP clip style viewport for your detail view, it's going to automatically update every time a change is made to the section view or the view that your detail is coming from. So we still have one more detail to make off of this. I want to show the spline reveal. And so what I'm going to do is copy this circle down until I get to one of those spline reveals. I kind of passed one up intentionally. I'm going to put this here. And I kind of want to line it up like that. I'll show you why in just a second, because I didn't adjust the circle left or right. I just put it straight down and centered it on the spline reveal. Now I'm going to do the copy command again. Copy that viewport, that circle, and the view title, and paste it off to the side. Then you're going to use VP clip again. VP clip is going to ask you to select the viewport, start with that, select the circle next, and then highlight that circle, use the caret, change the view scale. All right, now you're just going to move this down, line it up with the corner of that view title, take the bottom center corner of that circle, bring it up to here, and then raise that up 1.5 inches like this. Okay, we're going to move this on over so that way it's lined up over here, and then we're going to lower it down so that way it's not overlapping the other view. Now the reason that I did not move that circle left or right is more of a aesthetic thing for me. I really like to see all these views lined up with each other, and part of that is lining up what is in that view with what is going on below. So for example, if I highlight and draw a line straight down from that corner of my panel down to here, oh shoot, I guess I did mess something up, maybe slightly. Really what I was going for was that I should be able to move this so that that panel sits flush with the panel above. So as I'm looking at this on the drawing, I guess I just had it misaligned a little bit. Anyway, as I'm looking at that in the drawing, on paper, this lines up with this, so that way you can kind of tell that these are part of the same grouping of panels. So you can see this panel lines up with this one, this gap lines up with that, and the wall lines up with that wall. So that helps visualize what's going on, keeps everything fluid and consistent, and makes things look a lot more detail oriented. So you want to make sure that you're doing that as best as you can. I realize it's kind of a little overkill, but it's an extra little bit of extra credit that if you can do that, it looks a lot better in the long run. So anyways, let's go ahead and move back over to our plan view because we do have to make some blow up details off of that too. For example, I want to show a blow up detail of this full depth reveal, blow up detail of this full depth reveal because these are unique to this drawing and they don't show up in the section view at the end. I really don't need to show this one, but I can if I'd like to. And I really don't need to show this one, but I can if I'd like to again, because like these are the same full depth reveals as what's happening everywhere else on the print. But if you want to go the extra mile and show those details, go for it. It's only going to make the print look better if you have all the information there. And we clearly have a lot of room over to the side here for details. So what I can do is draw in a circle. And I'm going to go from there to there, doing mid between 2 points. I'm going to do the same type of thing I did before. What did I do before? Not 0.125, or maybe I did. We'll go with 0.0625. It's kind of small, but it should be okay. So I'm drawing these circles again in the paper space and not in the model space. Important note to take note of there when you're using the new school detail method is you are going to want to draw these in your paper space only. Being very, very careful not to mess that up. Okay, so I got my two details there. I'm going to copy this bubble and we're going to go up to the details up to the area above here. So again, just like before, I'm kind of centering this bubble around that reveal. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. Okay, so something like that should do. Okay, then when you get over here, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same method of approach we did on the section view. We're going to use the copy command and we're going to copy the viewport, copy the bubble, copy that. And actually what I would like to do to speed things up is I'm going to highlight all of these circles. And then what I'm going to do is paste this 4 separate times. Show you why in just a second, because if I go VP clip now, I can highlight that viewport, highlight the first one, delete the rest of the circles, VP clip, highlight the viewport, highlight the second circle, delete the ones I didn't use, VP clip, highlight the viewport, highlight the bubble, delete the ones I didn't need. And then VP clip, highlight this, highlight, whoops, hold on a minute. I skipped ahead too far. Highlight that bubble, delete the ones I didn't use. Yep, I got them all. Okay, cool. So then you're just going to take that caret, again, just like before, set that to full scale. Whoops, I did not mean to delete that. Okay, set that to full scale. And some of these are going to be very hard to see. I'm sorry about that. When we get them to full scale, they'll be a lot easier to see where they're at. But yeah, so we'll do that there. And then we're going to take all these details and we're going to neatly organize them so that they all fit on the paper and they're all stacked accordingly. So I'm not going to really explain too much of that because I have been doing a lot of that. But what we're doing is kind of just lining all this stuff up just like we have been doing. Same deal, different viewport. Goodness gracious. Oops, skipped a step. Move. Okay. Now, if you have a bunch of these that you have to change all to detail view, you can highlight all 4 of them. Come over to here to your properties, and you can switch it to, not VP scale, oh, lookup 1. You can switch that to say detail for all of these. And then actually, speaking of that too, we don't have architectural references for these details, so we need to also change all these to read NA instead of what was in there. So we're going to change all those. And then we're going to change all these. So detail A, detail B, detail C, and detail D. And then all we got to do is stack them over to the side, and we are golden. Now, I might break my own rule here, and I might actually move this to be a lot closer to that detail because I feel like it's going to be a little bit on the crammed side over here. Not to say it won't fit, but I'm skeptical that this is going to work. So what I'm going to do is get these a little bit closer to the, get them a little bit closer to the bubble, and then try to rearrange these until I can get these all nice and neatly organized over here. Okay, almost there. I'm just going to move these up. I've been moving these an inch closer to the bubble and then moving the bubble. So we'll start with that first and then work our way around. Got it. All right, perfect. Just kind of centering these. I'm going to see if I can get these nice and evenly spaced as much as possible. I don't know how well that's going to work, but we're going to do our best here. All right, that's not looking too bad, but I am going to move these one more time because I would rather see these all in line with each other, meaning that like the view title over here lines up with a view title over here. Like if I were to draw a line straight across, for example, from there to there, it's going to line up with that view title. This gives it more of a visual, like nice looking, clean, like sort of arrangement on the page. But yeah, these are A, B, C, and D details, showing all the different reveal details on the plan view. Let's go back to our second page again. We're showing details A and B, which are to represent the full depth reveal at the top, and detail B to represent the spline reveal in between the panels. So really that's all we need to show here. And then what comes next is going to be dimensioning, tagging, and plotting. Yeah, sorry. I had to think again real quick. It's 6 o'clock here. I was getting a little tired, so I'm just trying to make sure I don't forget any steps. All right. I think I'm going to keep on going until we get this done, and then we will call it a day from there because it's nearing the end of the day now. So let's dimension our plan view first. Double click in your viewport. Go ahead and make sure that we are labeling these. I am going to measure from wall to wall here to show 16 inches. And I did draw a line 6 inches tall there. I did briefly explain that a little bit before. I like to make sure that all my dimensions are pulled off the view a certain distance. That way, when you go to look at it later, everything should be nice and clean. Like things aren't going to be like staggered or kind of wishy-washy all over the place. They all have a uniform look to them. And what I did there was I measured from the wall to the corner of the other wall, and I put a VIF on there because this panel is determining, or the width of this panel is determined by that wall. So if the framers frame the wall at like 15 and 7/8, that means the panel has to also shrink to match up with that. So So I am putting a VIF there for that reason. You'll see me do that throughout the course of this drawing because panels, you do have a lot of VIF dimensions to work with. So it's nothing that nothing that's going to be uncommon for panels, I should say. You will see that quite a bit here. Okay. Now it seems a little bit weird, but that's all there is to dimensioning the plan view. Because we only have 2 panels here, we only have to dimension 2 of those. I'm going to move on to the next part, which is going to be these details over here. Normally I would say dimension in the viewport. I'm going to dimension these outside of the viewport, meaning that I'm putting dimensions here in paper space. The reason is I'm able to pull these dimensions off of that view just a little bit, so that way things do look nice and uniform and they're not having to get all crammed inside of that little bubble there. Yeah, so we'll keep on going around here and dimensioning all of this here. Sorry, this is taking a while, but plotting is not an easy task. It does take time to be able to get quick at that. So I do try my best to explain as much of it as I can, but without getting too carried away, because I know that sometimes if I do drone on about like plotting, it just kind of make it kind of mundane. So I'm just going to keep on dimensioning these. Again, lining things up from one viewport to another. Let's see. I am going to dimension the depth of this reveal here too, if I can. It's going to be kind of crammed, but I should be able to fit in a depth dimension just slightly right there. It's not going to be the same distance off the view, but it's going to be in there, and that's important to make note of. Okay. This reveal is a little bit different, and this might end up determining the rest of the reveals, like these full depth ones may end up becoming 1 inch, or this reveal might turn into a 3/4 inch reveal later. That is probably going to be determined by the architect later on once they have reviewed these drawings. Our standard is to make them 3/4 unless they're noted to be something different. And because of that, you can see that this one reveal is slightly different than the rest, which does make some kind of a weird detail there. So we'll see what happens with that. I can almost guarantee they're going to want to shrink all of them to 3/4. So this one will probably shrink to 3/4 as well at somewhere down the line. So once we get through plotting this, I have a few more panel drawings to work through for this project. Bet a lot of them are going to have very similar details. Oh, thanks, you too. Yeah, a lot of these are going to have the same details, so really you're going to see a lot of these same reveals all the way throughout the project. As we get through these, you're probably going to be an expert at spline reveals and an expert at full depth reveals, but that's okay. That's what the goal is here. So anyways, that's all you really need there dimensionally. Dimensioning anything that pertains to these reveals. Don't need to go crazy with it. Just need to show panel thickness, depth off the wall, reveal depth if possible, and anything that relates to those reveals. Okay, so when we get back to this later on, we're going to put in detail callouts for each of these circles. That is going to be super critical later, so that way we can label which circle belongs to which detail. But I'm not going to do that until we're ready to put all of the elevation, section, and detail calls on the pages. All right, let's move into our second page. Second page is our elevation views and our section view. All right, so let's start with the elevation views first. All right, and we're going to go through these one by one, just like before. I think what I would like to do is kind of dimension this wall because it is something funky. Not typical. So I'm going to try my best to make sure that we note that zigzag in the wall and what those dimensions are going to have to be. These will have to be VIF dimensions as well. So anything that's related to the wall, let's say you got panels that go between two walls, or you need to measure like height from top of ceiling to bottom of floor, or anything like that, you're going to put a dimension in to kind of give a good measurement for the project manager to be able to update with field dimensions later on. Now, panels, usually everything is VIF anyway. Not to say you shouldn't draw it to the correct drawing size and the correct scale, but a lot of these will most likely be changing by the time that the field dimensions come back, just because that's the nature of how things work in the construction industry. You'll see that a lot of the oops, I'm going to put a FF for above finished floor on there as well. Anyways, sorry. You're going to see a lot of times with VIF dimensions that they can drastically change. Sometimes you might get lucky and they might actually be exactly what they're supposed to be, but that's a very rare case. Like for that to happen, it's probably like 1 in 100 times for that to happen. So if you'll notice here too, as I'm getting to dimensioning my reveals, I'm actually adding a little label onto there too, just saying like reveal at the end of that dimension to allow, it's going to allow us to show what that is. Here, I can put a VIF on that because that is pertaining to what's happening with the walls. But yeah, anytime you have a reveal, throw a reveal label on it too if you got time, because it helps with clarifying what we're looking at. You got to remember, you're dealing with architects who aren't professional mill workers like we are. And so sometimes if they're looking at something, they may question it and be like, well, what is this extra line here? And showing what that is with a simple label is enough for them to understand what it is that they're looking at. So really important stuff to keep in mind as you're drawing something, to make sure that like you are making things as clear as you possibly can. Actually, I probably should. I'll mark those panel sizes on the other side. All right. All right, here we go. So this side here, what I'm going to do is actually label the spline reveals here. I can do that in the section view as well, and I probably will, but I kind of want to show what those spline reveals look like and what heights they're measuring to. So let's go dim continue. We haven't used that one in a while. Dim continue just allows you to continue off of an existing dimension that you just placed on your print. So it makes things go a lot faster when you're dimensioning and you need to get something done really quickly. You can just zip through it just like that. Again, anytime there's a reveal, you want to make sure to label it correctly so that way somebody down the line can see that and be like, oh, that's just a reveal. That's what that line is. So if you want to make multiple dimensions show reveal at the end of it, easy way to do that, highlight the dimensions you want to add the note to, then go into your properties over here, and there is a property called text override. You'll see that right here. To update your dimension to show reveal at the end of it, you're going to put these less than greater than, aka the fighting alligators. You're going to put those in there, and you're going to put reveal after it. What that will do is it will update all of those. The less than greater than that you're seeing there is a formula that represents the dimension on the print. I do have some overlap here that I'm going to take care of as well. I can't just leave that like that because it's going to look unprofessional. And so what I need to do is lower these down a little bit so that they're not overlapping the lines above there. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to do the same thing to the other elevation view. This one isn't as complicated because it doesn't have a zigzag to it like the other one, but it still has plenty of things to add. So what I'm going to do is go floor to ceiling here on the left. And then I'm going to measure to that line there. That's 6 inches off the view. That way things are all consistent from one view to the other. Again, we are going to write VIF and then AFF for verify in field, 276 inches above finished floor. Okay, down below, let's match our dimension style from over on the other elevation view. We're going to match that by going and labeling the reveal, labeling the panel size, and I'm also going to put a small label here for that 1 inch gap, because even though that's kind of, well, it is a reveal on this print, but I want to make sure that it is labeled as well, because technically it does fall between the staircase and this print, but I would rather see it on this print. It interacts with our panels. It doesn't really interact much with the stairs. Let's write a VIF on here for the panel width. And then on this side, what I want to do is go and do the reveal dimensions like we did before. So we're going to go from the floor to the bottom of the first reveal. 6 inches this way. Connect the dots. Dim continue. And we're going to go up to there, 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 and there, there. All right. And just like before, we can change multiple dimensions to say reveal. If we highlight them first and then go into properties, change the text override here to be alligator, alligator, reveal. Oops, come on. Don't be playing games with me, AutoCAD. All right. Now this one is a little funky. It's going to have to sit over top of something, but not quite like overlapping the lines. This one here, ugh, I don't like that. Let's see what I can do with that. See you, Steven. All right. Aha, there you go. I'm just going to slide all these in a little bit. That way it's not overlapping those lines, and that way we can make sure this is all clean. There's no overlaps, which would minimize like the look of any mistakes or anything on the drafting side. Moving over to here, we got our section view, which again has the exact same reveal locations, and we are using the same scale as this view over here. So what I would like to do is actually just copy all of these dimensions over to that view, which you can do that. If it saves you time, I'm all for it. Just make sure that when you do this, that things are still snapping to the correct place. I don't want to see dimensions that are kind of like, let's say you brought this over and these dimensions were more like, sorry, more like something like this. I really don't want to see that. That really doesn't represent on-site very well. It also doesn't really look good because you can't tell what's happening there. You want to make sure that your dimensions are snapping to the correct points on your drawing. So be very careful about that. If you decide to copy your dimensions from one view to another, it's really, really, really important to make sure that everything matches up. Okay, so once that's done, dimensionally, you're good. Let's go over to these detail views, and we're going to throw in the dimensions for these here. Just like before, I'm going to throw in, I think I made these a 1/4 inch off the view. Maybe it was a 1/2 inch. Probably ought to make it a 1/2 because that's really small. Oops, dim in. Okay, so from there to there, and from there to there, kind of just dropping in these dimensions to represent what's going on there. Same with this, we're going to label this. Now, when you have a spline reveal, it is not necessary to dimension the spline, but you want to make sure that your spline is actually drawn at the 1.25" that we talked about, like that. You don't have to dimension it, but just make sure that that is drawn correctly. Okay, and I'm throwing these in to represent the gap between the wall and the panel, and also to represent the panel thickness too. That way the client can see exactly what we plan on building and how it's going to interact with the scope around it, whether it's on-site scope or somebody else's scope. Okay, well, that's about it there. So as we wrap it up, what's left to go is we have to put in our material calls. We also have to put in our elevation and section calls and detail calls too. So I don't have a particular order that I go in for these, but what I'm going to do is start with the elevation calls and detail calls, and then I'm going to throw in my material calls following that. So elevation calls. Make sure that you are using the rotation grip on that elevation call itself. If you do use the rotate command, I promise you it's going to look weird. It's going to rotate the text with it, and you do not want that. You want your text to be standing straight up and down. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and I'm going to move this a little bit here, a little bit there. Just try to get this nice and fine-tuned. This is going to be elevation view 1 on P1.1. That's the zigzag panels there. And anytime you have a view call that's pointing to another view, or like another page on your drawing, you do want to make sure that this gray box with the page number is updated to show that page number. That is a formula, and it is only programmed to show the page number that the elevation call is on. So if you are calling out a view on a different page, you want to make sure that that formula is overwritten. I would normally suggest not doing that, but in a case like this, you have to. You're going to overwrite the formula, and you're going to write in the correct page number that goes with that view. Okay, so elevation calls, we're good to go. Let's move on to our detail calls. Okay, detail calls are really simple. I do want that formula back. So what I'm going to do is actually just pull in a detail call from the sidebar. And we're going to start by labeling these with the letters that go along with them. So A for detail A should be this guy here, which if I zoom in, you can see that guy right there. I'm going to also try to drop that in kind of like this. And I'm going to point a line or an arc that connects both that circle and the detail call. You do want to make sure this is on the dimension layer, and it's also a hidden line. But the key thing that I'm doing here is I'm connecting the center of that detail call to the center of that circle. And then what I'm going to do once I'm done with that is trim that line. That way it's touching the side of that circle and the side of the detail call. Okay, once you've done that, make another detail call over here. This is going to be detail B, and we will just verify that to make sure that looks correct. So view B, and we're going to do the same thing. We need an arc that goes from the center of that circle to the center of this circle here. We're going to trim that arc to there and to there, and then we need to apply the correct line type and the correct layer to that arc. So I'm going to use the match properties command to do that by clicking on that arc, clicking on this arc, and then it matches the properties from this one to that one. Moving on, we got to drop in a couple more detail calls here, one for each of these reveals. just like before, I'm going to line this up with this view by stacking it right on top of that one, and then using the move command followed by PR to highlight the previously selected item. Then I'm going to go up here, make sure that I'm looking at detail. This will be detail D actually. So this one's D, and the one below is C. Okay, we'll do an arc that goes from the center of this circle here to the center of that one. And then the same thing here, center of this circle to the center of this one here. All right, trim those arcs. And then we're going to use the match properties one more time to make sure that the lines are showing up on the dimension layer and they're showing up as hidden lines. So we'll use match properties, and we're going to go over here, find one of those other arcs we already changed, and match the properties from there to there. All right, elevation calls, detail calls look to all be correct. Just double check, make sure that nothing is standing out as being goofy or out of place. And then you're going to come over to here, and we need to add in section calls and detail calls here too. So section calls are really easy. Just like an elevation call, you're going to bring that in, paste it right there, change it using the rotation grip so that it's cutting through the object the way you want it to. And then you're just going to place it so that way the section call and the tail of that section call do not intersect any of your dimensions and do not intersect any of your view titles. It's really, really important to make sure that all of that matches up, things don't overlap. Really critical that you make sure that you do not have anything that overlaps, because as soon as you do, things start to look cluttered, they look a little messy. Like that, for example, it's just slightly overlapped, but you can tell just by looking at it that there wasn't much thought put into where that tail was located. So you really do want to make sure that you're paying attention to all those little things, because they do really matter in the grand scheme of how your drawing looks at the end. So at the very end here, we have detail A and detail B to add to. So we're going to add the detail A call and the detail B call over here. Oops. Sometimes I'll double click in the viewport and then it makes it so I can't get to these. I'm putting these in the paper space because with that circle being out here in paper space, I want to make sure that I'm also putting my detail call there. The reason for that is that if I don't put my detail call out here, I can't really find the center of this circle when I'm drawing that arc. So anyways, let's go ahead and change these. Line type hidden to, and then I'm going to copy this entire thing down using the center of this detail call or detail bubble to the center of this detail bubble. And it looks like we're very fortunate and nothing is overlapping, so we're really good to go on that. Nothing's overlapping there. And just making sure that our detail calls match up to the correct details on the side of our page over here. Okay, so now that we've got all of that taken care of, the only thing left to do is to apply the grain direction and the material call to each of these panel elevations. And just like cabinets, you don't have to apply it to every single cabinet door, every single panel, but you are going to put your material call at least on one panel per elevation. Just remembering before, these were all VN1 panels. So I'm going to change those out to read VN1. All right. And then I'm going to place these on my panel here. Generally, I tend to try not to place things over top of anything on my view, but sometimes with material calls, it actually makes it a little bit cleaner to look at because you don't have arrows pointing to everything. So I kind of like to put those here. And you can't forget to put that grain direction, because that grain direction is uber important when it comes to making sure that you are calling everything out correctly. Like grain direction, you got to make sure it's labeled. Otherwise, these panels could get made incorrectly and the grain could be running horizontally instead of vertically. So that grain direction is important for that reason. It also helps with making sure you order enough material too. Yeah, because there's a lot of things that go into that. So if you know what your grain direction is, or you're comfortable with making an educated guess as to where it should go, typically it's going to run vertically. Base trim, it always runs horizontally. General rule that will help you out with that is that anytime you have grain direction, you always pretty much want to run at the length or the long side, along the long side of your panel, your cabinet door, your trim, whatever you have. You don't want to run at the short grain or the short side, because if I was to run at the short side, we're going to waste veneer, we're going to waste laminate, because we're burning through more of it. And you're going to have more joints in it too. So it's not going to look pretty either. Anyways, that's pretty much it. So as far as that goes, unless I'm forgetting anything, I believe we have covered everything for these panels specifically. And tomorrow, what I'm going to do is save this. I'm going to publish it, mark it as review, and then first thing tomorrow, I'm going to look at it with my own eyes and make sure I didn't forget anything, because it is easy to do that, especially with working late or working on a drawing all day long. You want to make sure that you double check your work, go through that checklist that we have, and making sure that things match up, because you don't want to send in a drawing to review that has mistakes on it if you can avoid it. So let's save it here for now. I will mark it as review, but my goal is I'm going to be checking it first thing tomorrow morning when I get in. I'm going to make sure that I didn't forget anything here. And I've been working on this one for a little bit, so it is something that I could see I might have some mistakes on. So let's go ahead and mark it as review. Boom. All right. It's in the folder, and I will check it tomorrow. I'm going to save this here. I don't need this floor plan anymore. I can close out of that. And yeah, that leaves us tomorrow with P2. So we'll move on to P2 next, and we'll work our way through the rest of these panels.